And there you have it, the season finale of Soul Leveling. What a fantastic episode. There is so much to go through with this episode, to be honest. I mean, yes, we have this random guy showing up in front of the Knights Guild and wiping them all out, and then Dad's nearby, and so this is all kind of hinting at some stuff to come up later on. We have, yes, Shaw gets saved. We got to talk about that. And yeah, this whole entire segment that was skipped from the anime adaptation that I'll put at the very end of this video that gets into, yes, the Americans coming after Sung. The Americans want Sung bad, which makes sense, obviously, because as we see at the very end of this episode, Sung's just oozing out aura at this point. Everybody wants him badly, but my gosh, let's get into the episode proper, kicking things off with, yes, saving Shaw. Yes, didn't go how I was expecting it. My assumptions was that either he was going to summon or arise Byung-Gyu, and it was going to cause some problem with Baek, or he was possibly going to arise the bug and have the bug who has Byung-Gyu's abilities, you know, help out Shaw. It went with the first. Now, the interesting thing is with the anime adaptation is they failed to get into Sung failing to arise Byung-Gyu. Yes, he brings him over there. He goes to do the arising. Baek's immediately like, what are you doing with his body? What are you doing with Byung-Gyu? And yes, this is the point in which they all realize, oh my gosh, he can do this to people too. He can awaken the dead, essentially. Now, the cool thing that happens in the manhwa is that Sung actually fails to arise him twice. He's like, this doesn't make any sense. My current level should be enough to arise him. What's actually happening here? Maybe Sung believes, maybe possibly because this person feels so strongly opposed to becoming a shadow soldier, maybe that's the reason. He says that maybe he sees it immoral to turn a human being into one. But still, I need to save the person that's still alive. And that's when he arises again, and it's successful. Kind of indicates the idea that Byung-Gyu, when he was trying to arise him to be a soldier, Byung-Gyu was rejecting it. He doesn't want to be a fighter. He doesn't like battlefields. Just like Baek gets into again with this episode. He's like, no, please don't do that. He doesn't like to fight. Don't force him to do that. But then there's the other side of this whole thing where, yes, where at some point Sung realizes, but I need to save her. I need to save Shaw. And it seems like possibly his thought process there may have made it to where Byung-Gyu would actually accept it. Because yes, as it indicates more so in the manhwa, the moment he's arised, he immediately goes to Shaw. He doesn't stop and pose. Like, that's the unfortunate thing with the anime. The anime has him like standing in front of Baek and everything like that. No, immediately to Shaw. He immediately goes there and heals her. He does his job properly. He saves her life, first and foremost. And that's what Sung says, yeah. He doesn't even need to be commanded. I can see what kind of person he is. He's a kind-hearted person because I didn't even need to command him. He immediately went there. But yes, why I like that aspect, that little additional aspect that he failed to arise Byung-Gyu, and again, he has to push the idea of saving her life, I think it adds more to why Sung believes he needs to release him. Yes, it's partly because Baek puts that hand on that shoulder again and says, hey now, please, he doesn't like fighting, don't make him into this. You're going to be going to more battles, he doesn't like fighting, please don't do this. And I love how Sung's like, yeah, put your hand on my shoulder again, that's the second time you did that. But this, I like how it's like, it tries to make it out like Sung's mad, and then he like turns, he's like, but this time you're requesting, so I'm all for it. I like your idea there. He was already thinking about that. From this point right here, getting that sense that this is not what Byung-Gyu wants, he knows back here, you know what? This guy doesn't want this. He's not like everybody else. He's not like Tank. He's not like everybody else here. He's not a hunter that craves to fight, as Baek was getting into a lot of. It seems like everybody, a requirement to awakening is that they crave to fight. Byung-Gyu was different. He didn't want that. He wanted to be a historian. He wanted to do all this stuff. And so that's why Sung decides at that point, with what Baek's saying, don't worry, I was already planning this, release him. And they get that little smile. But again, this does sort of all hint at more the idea of wondering if the Arised have their soul. It really did feel like they were trying to put a lot of emphasis right here that Byung-Gyu wasn't just an Arised. He wasn't just a shadow soldier. He was actually a person in there. So it kind of gives that feeling that the soul is actually there and that he let that go. Which, yes, is sort of frightening to the idea that he has Tank and whatnot forever being his soldier. But anyways, it was cool. So thankfully, despite my criticisms last episode, really kind of wondering if they would actually get into taboo subjects like this, it does technically hint into it with the idea of, you know, making Byung-Gyu an actual shadow soldier and forcing him to fight. This idea of necromancing people really come to the forefront. People questioning it. And again, I was really kind of wondering if Baek would see this as disgusting and he would hate him for it, or if society itself would hate him for it. No, they cut the cameras, so that's not going to be a case. But the question mark was there. It touched a little bit in it, but it still kept it to a positive nature here in the idea that Sung respects the wishes and says, okay, I got what I needed. Goodbye. I got what I needed. I'm good. And I was kind of curious if possibly now that he has the bug as well, I wonder if the bug will still have healing abilities. Yeah, of course, everybody else is kind of freaked out about this. My gosh, the fiercer the battle, the more powerful he becomes. This is technically something we shouldn't have go to the public. They really don't need to know about this. I was kind of wondering if the actual reporter will end up leaking something out. I mean, somebody ends up doing it eventually. The same thing happened with the Red Gate. Somebody ends up telling a lot of people, and that just gets out there. But yes, we also get a brief shot of the Japanese that are there, and apparently the chairman really wants them to execute Plan Number 9, which it doesn't really get into. They end up canceling it at some point. But yes, the idea here is that they were supposed to do something. They're supposed to go back in there. Now, the thing that adds a little bit more to this number 9 plan that we didn't have previously was that at some point they end up establishing, don't worry, that bug that killed Goto is dead. You need to go. But they end up canceling it. They said, no, never mind. We only have like 3 people left at this point. If we lose any more people, it's going to upset the balance. We're not going to have people to take out the gates that are domestic. This is going to be a bad thing if we end up going in there. They're already establishing at this point, something took out that bug that took out Goto. It's too dangerous to continue this. Their original plan was to take out the bug because the bug should be injured by Goto. But now they're thinking, no, this is too much of a threat. We can't do this. Thus implies to me my theory that number 9 was to go in there and finish off the South Koreans. I think originally, because their original plan was to essentially hope that all the South Koreans, they lose all their S ranks with this whole mission. So they would be the saviors by killing the bugs, but then they would also make sure that none of the South Koreans remain. So I think that's what plan number 9 is to wipe out all of the S ranks and just completely upset the balance and thus make themselves look good at the same time. So I think that's probably why they canceled it, is they realized, it's probably too much of a risk. That's when we get a skipped scene with a Mr. Brennan, which is apparently the director of the Federal Bureau of Hunters. And he's meeting with Michael Connor. And based on how the conversation goes, I'm assuming this Federal Bureau of Hunters is essentially Americans. These are the Americans. And of course, they're watching this whole situation. They're seeing just how insanely powerful Sung is. And they're also really questioning at this point, how can we get Sung? They're like, man, this guy is he's a waste to be in such a small country like South Korea. We need to figure out how we can get him in here. Now, they do make the connection between Sung and his father. That yes, here recently, we had this one hunter that was actually found in this dungeon. They brought him in. He ended up being Sung Il-hwan. And so they very quickly make the connection that, this guy is probably this guy's son. Now, the interesting thing they drop in this little moment right here is that they can't do the same thing they did with Hwang Dong-so. Apparently, how they ended up recruiting him, because I don't know if they established this previously, but yes, Hwang Dong-so, who is the current guy that's trying to find and kill Sung because he killed his brother, he apparently at some point was in South Korea, and he actually was recruited by the Americans, and he left for America, even though he got a lot of criticism for it. And so they're saying right here they can't do the same thing as what they did when they recruited him. South Korea is a longtime ally of the US. Taking another hunter away from them would be like a slap in the face. But even still, they're kind of wondering if they should do it, and that gets more into like a later scene that I will get into at the very end of this video. But post the battle, all the ants go crazy. They go to leave immediately. They end up leaving Sung behind because he wants to farm some levels. He just wants to farm some levels. He ends up bringing out the Demon's Monarch's longsword, which is insanely OP. He ends up reaching level 100. And then that's, when he goes to arise the Bug King. Beru, as they call him. It mentions something in the manhwa about it being named after this writer of the book, The Ants or something like that. But that's like Bert, or I believe. So they call him Beru, even though it's supposed to be Bert. But he rises it. He finds himself in a dark space, thinking that it failed, and then suddenly Beru shows up. Apparently, of all the arising that he's done so far, Beru gets his own summoning ritual. This is like fake Grand Order, where all the summoning rituals are the same, except for these special characters. Suddenly the entire screen changes. He gets his own personalized summon ritual. But he very quickly realized that he can talk. Now, Beru claims that I've always been able to talk, and thus I can talk. But in Sung's mind, he realized that yes, Tank can't talk. Tusk can't talk. They talked before, but they can't talk now. So he assumes it's because he's a general rank. Of all the arising he's done and all the leveling of those arising he's done, this is the first one that is a general rank. And he believes that possibly once they reach that general rank, they could possibly talk. But he asks if he wants to follow him because he killed him. He's like, no, I was reborn with your power. You're the true king, whatever, and decides to follow him. And that's when we get a skip scene with him arising the queen. Now I can see why they skipped this scene, because in the end of it, nothing really changes from the beginning to the end. It's just more of an aspect of answering why didn't he arise the queen. The queen is supposed to be the most powerful besides, Beru. It should be the most powerful here, but not. But yeah, he arises the queen, and immediately he realizes that his bonds to all of the ants in the area has gone down. It's become weaker. And that's when he starts questioning Beru, like, explain what's going on here. And Beru basically answers all of his questions. He specifically says that, yes, because the queen itself inherits the power to rule over the entire colony, whenever she's present, she's obviously going to take a lot of that control away from him. So he's like, okay, that doesn't really matter too much. But the other big problem that he's seeing is that the mana power of this queen has dropped drastically. She was basically the ruler of this entire dungeon. She was the boss. Why isn't she so strong? And Beru explains that, yes, most of her mana was used for reproduction, but now she no longer has a body to reproduce. So it makes sense that, yeah, this is whole purpose is to produce minions to go out there. That's no longer the case. So that's when Sung realized that, okay, so she's not suited for battle. Beru says, yes. He says, then there's no need for 2 commanders, and terminates it. So again, I can kind of see why they decided not to have this scene in there, because it's kind of like a, let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. All right, fail. But yeah, that's when we get another funny scene with the minions. He immediately turns and sees all the shadows are all gathering all the essence stones. Because yes, this was a dungeon break. This is a bunch of essences and whatnot here that they can gather for resources. And Sung's like, hey, stop that. You guys need to stop that, because all this stuff is going to be used for the reconstruction of Jeju Island. So it kind of shows a little bit of selflessness in Sung. Like, he could totally have all of his shadows steal all these resources and leave. Like, I mean, he's the king. He's the one that saved everybody. Why wouldn't he get the spoils? But he decides to leave it all there so they can actually, reconstruct the actual island itself, get the economy going again. But he keeps one stone. He keeps the one from Beru's corpse. So he does have it one. It's like black too, so it's kind of unique looking. But yeah, in the meantime, all the swarms start to rush into the mainland. 4,000 ants that have lost control. He ends up sending Beru to go and kill all the monsters. At some point, Song is attacked, and Johei's freaking out. I like that turn from Johei. Like, she just turns and it's like, I'm like, geez, dang, put a little physics there. But no, Song is saved by Beru, and immediately, Johei thinks of Song. I don't know. I guess it could be an aspect that Johei herself can sense auras. She can sense some sort of presence that he has, or it could just be that she was saved by him before, and so she thinks of him every single time she's saved. Like, oh, it's got to be Sung. It's like somebody saves her from like an oncoming vehicle. Like, somebody just grabs her and pulls her back off the street or something like that when an oncoming vehicle comes, and she's gonna be like, Sung? She just always thinks of him. It's a PTSD thing. I can see that. But yeah, we did get to briefly see the hero of the Chinese. I mentioned this previously in a skip content, is at some point they had the Chinese were waiting off the mainland, waiting for the insects to come into land. And at some point, the captain of the ship was talking about his fascination with the hero of the Chinese. Yeah, they finally show him in action. Apparently all the bugs finally made it to their mainland, and he just comes out there and one-shots it all. He looked pretty cool. Really, really cool animation. That's when we get a skip scene with the Scavenger Guild leader, which is Thomas Andre. Of course, he was the one that actually went and met with Go at some point just before the Jeju raids. He's the guy that looks like All Might. They have a little brief moment with All Might of the Americans guilds. But yeah, he's talking to his assistant about the connection between Huang and Song. The fact that, yes, Song apparently murdered his brother, but he's of course watching the whole situation that's happening on Jeju Island, and he's like, crap, now it's gonna be even harder for the two of us to meet. I really, really want to meet this guy. And when the assistant asks what will he do if Song and Huang end up getting in a fight, this is kind of hinting at what's to come. He says, don't get me wrong, Huang is the property of the Scavenger Guild, and the Scavenger Guild is mine. I won't forgive anyone that messes with my property, even the government of the United States. That's pretty much hinting that if Huang ends up going and finding Song, which he's going to, if Huang ends up getting in a fight with Song, and obviously Song's going to beat the living crap out of him. I even hinted that to other people. I assumed at some point Huang is going to show up in South Korea. He's probably going to go to his house, probably get near his sister, and the shadows that are currently protecting her will probably one-shot him. I have a feeling that we're going to show how strong Sung has gotten by having his shadows just one-shot the guy. Which we've already indicated that he's not that powerful. I mean, he's powerful, according to everybody else. He's really powerful, but like, yeah, you even have Sung's dad literally took him out in seconds. Like, this is not a guy that is going to be the levels of what seems like we're kind of hinting at these individuals that are coming from the other side, which we got to see what seems like another one in this episode. But yeah, when Sung ends up taking down Huang, that indicates that, yeah, this guy, All Might, is probably going to come after Sung. But yeah, some information on the Scavenging Guild. It operates all over the U.S. It's led by Thomas Andrig, which again is this All Might guy. He's a national level hunter. The guild has recruited a large number of S ranks. Members are sometimes dispatched to other countries to aid with gates. And yes, Huang Dong-so, NS rank, is a part of this guild. But yeah, now that everything is settled, we get to see the memorial they created. Apparently, they erected a memorial within days, which that's pretty incredible. But I guess within a world with hunters with incredible power, it makes sense that they can erect a monument. Specifically in the manhwa, it points out that 4,801 hunters and 727 awakened civilians were called to arms, 64 awakened beings, and 32 civilians died. Which, unfortunately, with the anime adaptation, you don't really get a sense of that. But yeah, a lot of people died. Nearly 100 people in this area had died because of this whole incident. But yeah, Sung arrives at the monument. We get a sense here that, yeah, of course, the reporters are reporting it differently. Some are saying that he's, praised as a hero. This guy saved everybody. What a great job. He's so powerful. What a great dude. And of course, yes, there's a lot of criticism that's coming to him. Like we were all mentioning as the episodes were coming up, why didn't you go there sooner? If you had shown up sooner, Byung-Gyu would not have died. How dare you? I really did like Byung-Gyu, and so I do kind of dislike him for that. Again, according to the manhwa, his mother just got released, and so it makes sense. And again, he kind of assumed that these dudes are super powerful, that they would have no problem with his raid. Now, here's the thing that bugs me. That yes, Sung, puts down the flowers, turns around, goes to walk by, and Baek stops at some point nearby him and says that, no matter what they say, without a question, because of you, we suffered less casualties. Because you showed up, we got through this. You put an end to the tragedy. Now, yes, a couple of episodes ago, we had Sung cry, and it turned into this massive controversy where everybody was claiming that it got downvoted on Crunchyroll because it had Sung cried, which I made a whole video on that, really dispelling it because it's just an episode with no fighting. We've had previous episodes with much more dislikes that were the same case. It just had no fighting, and thus people just downvoted it. But I did find it funny, the fact that, yes, in the manhwa, Baek cries right there. And I'm like, I wonder if they cut him crying because they didn't want another controversy. I'm just joking. But yeah, after this, he runs into Go. They end up having a meeting together. He asks about forming a guild. What are you going to do in the future? He says, I'm going to form a guild. Very quickly, he says, yeah, it's fine. Just call us up. We'll take care of the rest. In the manhwa, it gets into more details about what is currently happening on the island, which is this whole situation where the Knight's Guild gets knocked out, which I'll get into in a minute. That yes, they've been sending people to the Jeju Island, and he's curious if possibly Sung had erected a barrier that caused them to lose consciousness on the island. And he's like, no, I didn't put any barriers up. What exactly happened? Well, they don't know. Apparently, these individuals that go to Jeju Island after this whole incident, they've lost consciousness, and they don't recall what happened before or after it. Which Sung at this point is like, man, it's probably traps that were laid by the ants. I don't know. We briefly get to see Cha. She wants to be stronger because she got rescued. Doki Doki. Want to be at his side. Doki Doki. And then, yes, we get the whole scene with the Knights Guild showing up to the island and running into the mysterious man. Which, yes, initially, a little extra context here. This is the third night of the Jeju raids. They're arriving there to basically collect the essences stones that were left behind and check to see if there's any other, ants that possibly are alive, which they end up finding one. In the manhwa, we get a little bit of insight into Park's character, which, again, he is the leader of the Knights Guild. He's the one that's kind of leading this group, walking in there. Apparently, when he was younger, he dreamed of the day that he'd become a gold medalist. He actually was training physically to one day win a gold medal in the Olympics and whatnot. And yes, unfortunately, after all that grueling training and all the effort that he put into it, he got to the point where he had to do all of his pre-tests. They found out that, no, he's not doping, so that's good. And then he failed a very, very important test. A test to see how much mana you have. Yes, apparently whenever they have Olympics in this world, they have to not be a hunter, which that was kind of an interesting world building aspect there, because you would question, yeah, what if somebody like Sung currently is join the Olympics? He would beat everybody. So apparently in this world for the Olympics, they might have a category that's specifically for people that are hunters. Not sure exactly how you would even do that, because people would be like, again, in the S rank, Some people are just insanely powerful compared to people that might be at the very low bottom tier of S rank. But yes, apparently to go to the Olympics, you have to have this test to see if you're awakened, and he didn't know that he was awakened, and so he got kicked out. But he decided at that point he had to give up on his dream, and he found a new calling. He was going to create the greatest guild ever, and so that's apparently the origins of the Knights Guild. Again, really cool little insight into the world itself and how they handle awakened beings, especially for the Olympics. And yes, in order to make their guild stronger, he's going to take all of these essence stones, which he ends up getting corrected by somebody saying that that's embezzlement. You can't do that. But yes, that's when this individual shows up. This guy, this big man with some cool armor on, shows up and says they're noisy. Very quickly in the manhwa, they pick up that they can't recognize his language. Specifically, Park says the language spoken by beasts. So it kind of implies the idea that he's heard this language before, Park has, and it sounds like that. Or maybe he's making an assumption because he just assumes this guy is a beast. He doesn't specifically say that this guy's a beast. He questions it. But yeah, that's when this other individual just snaps their fingers and they all fall asleep. And a lot of very interesting things are spoken about here. Like I said before, I was very curious about how this guy with him looks very much so like the elves that were in that red gate. Which makes me wonder if they're possibly from the other side of the gate in this other world, possibly this race of elves. I think those ones specifically that Sung fought had much more pointier and horizontal ears, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong there. But it at least has that same color to him. Very much so that same blue color to him. But it kind of makes me assume this guy possibly is just a being from another world. He just says that he just put him to sleep, at which point he wonders if he confirmed his power. He says, yes, indeed, it is his power. Which makes me wonder if they're specifically talking about Sung. Like they are coming here at Jeju Island in order to confirm if this power that Sung used there was that his power. I don't know. Again, it does show later on Sung's father is there. That could be specifically. But it seems like they're talking about two different individuals here. He says it's really puzzling. I didn't think that he would help humans. Which that part does make me think they're talking about Sung's father. That they know him and they're kind of curious why he's using his power to help the humans. But there's a third party here as well that I think they could be talking about. They could be talking about whoever is empowering Sung. Like they came here and they confirmed that this power that Sung used here is his power. This king, this other being from this other world that is currently enhancing Sung, which would make them question why he's helping humans. Which that goes in my whole theory about the idea of whoever's empowering Sung and giving Sung power is probably somebody that is trying to get Sung stronger so that at some point he can either take out all the humans or possibly take out another being in their world, this world beyond the gates. The guy says his weird behavior isn't new. You can go ask him if you want. If there's a chance to meet him, work is done here, opens a portal, and goes to leave. Now this next statement definitely does kind of take out Sung's father in this whole scenario because he said you came here by yourself. He says he thinks that one of them is here, which that would probably be Sung's father because we do briefly see Sung's father standing there. And they said that you can leave this area to him. So really by this whole conversation, what I'm currently coming to a conclusion on is it sounds like they're essentially people that, again, are kind of enhanced by the other side, are working with a party on the other side, and they're all coming here for some sake of kind of investigating what's going on. And again, they're seeing if this power that Sung is using is possibly a specific being from their side, but additionally kind of making out like they're similar to Sung's father, that they're all sort of playing their own part or their own role, or again, possibly with a certain faction, which could be cool if they end up kind of turn this whole situation into multiple factions. The idea that you have the humans on our side, and then on the other side of the gate, you have this being that's enhancing Sung. You have, whoever is leading these two individuals with what they're currently doing. That's sort of where I'm going with. Now, one interesting thing this dude says, just before he goes to leave, he says it stinks. If that woman sees this, she would make a big fuss. Now, I'm curious if he's talking about specifically somebody that he knows, maybe a past party mate, or if this might be leading it towards the idea that this guy is somehow connected to Cha. Is this guy possibly Cha's father? That could be possibly a thing there. I don't think they've ever really gotten to Cha and her father. In the manhwa, he's specifying that it stinks of dead insects, but it could be an aspect that he's saying that she would smell this and she would be appalled by it because, again, Cha's an S-rank sniffer. I think that possibly is where they're going with that. But anyways, I'll be curious to see them again. Again, it kind of indicates that this is another possible faction that, again, is similar to Sung and his father, that they're coming from the other side, being enhanced from the other side. Pretty cool. The guy can actually cut through the air and teleport around. But yeah, that's when Sung's stuck in traffic. He tells his buddy that they got the approval to make the guild. The girl's like, hey, I want to join really quickly. Okay, can I join? I'll be really useful. Let me join, please. But yeah, that's when he gets a call from Go. They have a gate nearby, needs some help with it. He goes in there, and of course it turns into a red gate. Like I said, I think all these gates are affected by him. Every time he goes in the gate, it will possibly turn to a red gate. That's why I think he personally should be careful about who he goes in the gates with, because everybody will be dragged into whatever he's doing. Whatever is making him stronger is probably making them red gates. But yeah, in the manhwa, there's a little bit of extra segment here they skipped, which is technically what they covered with the anime adaptation of Sung first bringing his mother home, where she got into the fact that his father was a firefighter and why she married him and whatnot. But it was cute because it gets into the idea that she used to do whatever she could to make him happy. She obviously knows now that he is, awakened and that there's no sense in trying to stop him. But additionally, yes, acknowledging that, as an S rank, his duty is to save people. Save as many people as he can. That's exactly what his father did. He was a firefighter before he became a hunter after all. And she fell in love with him when she witnessed him saving people from a fire. She knows that he has the same blood as his father, and there's nothing that she can do about it. So, go at it and don't push yourself too hard. It's kind of showing that she's supporting him because she knows this is what he's going to do. Which, yeah, he's kind of relieved the fact that she's okay with him continuing to be a hunter. Which, yes, at this point, we're kind of questioning, why is he still a hunter? He achieved what he was seeking out to do, but he hasn't really had a moment where he stops and questions, do I keep going? There was a brief moment before he was called to go and talk to Go and to be a part of the Jeju Island raids, but he hasn't had that moment to stop and go, but wait, why? Why am I continuing this? Which, yes, the only answer that we currently have is what Baek said in the idea that hunters have a thirst for hunting. They just have that desire. Yes, as a point right here at the very end of the episode, it is getting to the reason that everybody has a reason to fight. He's pointing out that it's his family, or at least it cuts to his family, and it says family. It says upholding beliefs, and I think that was Go. And it has proving themselves, which is Cha, and defying fate, which it points to Sung's father. That was probably the more interesting one at the very end there, is showing the father. Defying fate. Implying that Sung's father is tied up into some sort of fate. Like he has something that he has to do, and he's trying to break that. Or something will happen, and he's trying to break that. That'll be interesting if they ever get into that. What exactly is a fate that the father is trying to stop? And again, that could be what he was talking to Hwang about, with this idea of this individual that gets stronger as the battle goes on. Anybody you throw at him, if they're not strong enough, they will only aid him. Which again, kind of got my theory about the idea that he could be talking about his son, who's able to arise. Anybody that falls before him that's too weak, he will just arise and they'll be part of his strength. But yeah, either way, it's some interesting stuff. But yes, that gets us into the final skipped segment that, again, I do want to emphasize that this scene can possibly be integrated later on in the next season. So, watch beyond this point if you wish. The scene itself is not significant, but it does hint heavily at possibly some big stuff to come. But yes, that is Adam White, who is part of the Federal Bureau of Hunters, which again is the Americans. The Americans, right after the whole scene where Sung is meeting with Go after the memorial, he ends up bumping into Adam in the parking lot. He says that I went to your office previously, you're a hard person to find, and he says that I got some very, very important information for you. Something that nobody else, and information that nobody else can share with you. He's like, hey, I have a car nearby, you want to come with me? And Sung's like, I'll think about it, I'll get in contact with you if I want to. Like I say, oh man, I probably shouldn't hold my cards too much. Have you ever heard of an upgrader? Question mark. It's an awakened being who can enhance the abilities of another awakened being. Ever heard of them before? That immediately catches Sung's attention, and he ends up going with them. They cut over to this meeting room where this guy presents Sung with some paperwork. Says, this is the immigration process. But just for you, I can make you an American citizen this second. Sung's like, I don't care. I came here because you said something about this upgrader. This guy said something about this upgrader. What is this about? Well, in order to prove what they're talking about here, they end up bringing out Norma Selner. And Norma Selner is the only person in the entire world, according to them, the only person in the entire world that is a hunter that has this special ability, which is enhancing. Sung immediately picks up that this lady's unique in some way, and she says, everybody that sees me at first always doubts my power, but after experiencing it, you'll crave it more. She points out that, of course, every single awakened being has a limit. Like when you become awakened, this is your cap. This is as far as you can go. That's why having a second awakening is so special, is because you're going beyond that cap. But yes, unlike Sung, everybody else that's a hunter that's awakened, they can't go past that limit. However, she can help people reach beyond that potential. She says there's 3 stages, and it can lift their limitations. She's not sure what she would call it. She says it's either a forced awakening or possibly just drawing out their true potential. They then point out a limiter to what she does, and that's the fact that she requires a long rest after using her powers. Specifically, she can only do this 3 to 4 times a year, which they're really kind of buttering up Sung right now to kind of point out to him just how special this little moment right here is. They're leading into something here. You can all smell it. This is Americans sitting down Sung and saying, we have the ability to push you even stronger. Everybody has a limit to their awakening, and we can push you further. And we can only do this 3 to 4 times a year, and we're going to do it for you. Questioning her more, she says going through 3 stages of this, an individual can see an increase of 20 to 30% of their strength. 20 to 30% of their strength, which again is maxed, they're able to take that and push it beyond that. And this is the point in which Sung connects. Oh, so this kind of, at least what Sung's realizing here, is probably why Hwang Dong-sul transferred to America and got all that heat, is because he probably wanted this power. Again, they probably did the same thing to him. They probably brought Hwang Dong-sul into a room and said, we can make you more stronger if you join us. And they're trying to do the same thing to Sung right here by offering him an enhancement. Which, yes, at this point, they offered a Sung. We can give you priority for this. We will give you a priority to getting your enhancement from this lady if you transfer over. We'll cover everything. We'll take care of everything. Just come on over here. We'll sign you to whatever guild you want. We'll make sure that you get the best contract. Just come on over, and we're going to give you a taste. They even offered him right here, we're going to give you 1 sample of this right now, and you'll see how great it is. They're essentially giving him 1 free test. They say, you don't have to sign anything yet. We're just going to give you 1 free test and you can call this later. But they assume he's going to like this upgrade so much that he's going to immediately sign up. Which, yes, they try. And immediately when she touches his hand, she goes into this dark void and she barely sees his face above her and she screams out and everybody pulls their guns and he's like, dude, why are you pulling a gun on this guy? You're going to get us all killed. They quickly apologize to Sung. He's like, don't worry about it. But specifically, the guy reprimands the man that pulled the gun and says, if you did something like this to Thomas or Liu Zinggang, all of us would be dead. Yes, we know by now that Thomas Andre is a part of the Americans. This implies that they did the same thing to Thomas, and Thomas joined the Americans. But additionally, Liu, who is currently the hero of the Chinese, the S rank that is so beloved by the Chinese, this implies he got a sample of this too, but rejected it. That's the interesting thing here. This implies the Americans probably have been doing this for a while now, that they have this enhancer lady, that she's able to boost them up and make them stronger, and they're using her to essentially steal people from other countries. Thomas was one of them, which again is the all-white looking dude, and Liu is not. They failed to get him, which makes me like his character more. No, he's staying with the Chinese. Like, he's staying with his people. That's actually pretty cool. But anyways, she panics and she's not feeling well anymore. They're like, we'll have to do this again later. Sorry. Escort Sung out. We'll talk to you later. We'll contact you later. And then they go to talk to the lady afterwards and they ask her what she saw. She says, he is a king. A powerful one at that. This shocks him. He says, so that means that he's as strong as a national level hunter. Because typically, a king, a powerful one that she would see was going to be typically a national level hunter. She says, I'm not sure. He's a king, all right, but not an ordinary one. While looking at him, he was looking back at me, but not Sung. It wasn't Sung that she was seeing. That thing that stared back at me was an infinite darkness within him. On top of that, there's no limit to his power. Kind of implying there's another person inside of Sung, which could technically kill my theory on the idea of Sung himself being dead and him always being like a zombie, a corpse that this other being from this other world at the very beginning essentially revived him to go, reawakened him, arised him to send him back to our world to get stronger, it could imply the idea that, yeah, he could be alive, but there's another being inside of him that could be taking over, which is like his thirst for fighting and whatnot that's taking over. The thing that makes him cold every now and then, you know, makes his eye glow blue and shoot out like flames. That being, I don't know. But anyway, like I said, very interesting chapter because that kind of opens the door to a lot of stuff. It, again, kind of shows how the Americans are working, how they're recruiting all these very powerful national level hunters. It's basically, again, giving them a sample of the ability to go beyond their limits, which doesn't really mean much to Sung. He sees 20 to 30% as insane, but he doesn't need that because he's able to get stronger. But this shows why they have all these other individuals, all these other people like Kwong, that they were able to give that boost to bring them in to make them even more stronger. And that would also point out why the Americans have very powerful hunters, not only luring them in that way, but also boosting them even more. That's it. That's everything I think in this episode. What a long recording. Hope you guys enjoyed this run through of skip content and my thoughts on each of the scenes of the finale of Soul Leveling. It was a lot of fun going through this season. Like I said before, season 1 was kind of a shrug for me. I really like season 2. It really did feel like this season things really did pick up. I'm much more interested in it now. The world building, the mechanics, the characters, a lot of stuff is definitely coming up for me. And I really enjoy this season. I'm very excited to see season 3 when that comes around. Kind of wondering based on the chapter count, because I think we're at like 111 or so, and there's only 200. I'm curious if we're possibly going to get, if they're doing like 50 chapters per season, kind of makes me wonder if they're going to go over that limit there, maybe have a shorter season at the last season for the 4th season, or possibly doing a movie for the final part. I don't know. They'll make movies out of all this stuff. They're going to do movies out of all this stuff. Milk it as much as possible. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed my coverage of this series for this season. I thank you guys for checking them out, the videos. They actually did very, very well compared to most shonens that I've covered in the past. So thank you guys for your support. But if you like this video, make sure to hit the like before you leave. If you like this content and you want to support John more, I have links in the description below. Greatly appreciate it. Until next time, y'all take care.